Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have you here with us today, and thanks for joining us as we have the opportunity to share a little bit of insight on what helps make healthy companies and healthy leaders. I'm Doug Cothey. I am the founder and principal consultant of People Smart Group, and also the founder of the Organizational Health Collective. And Organizational Health Collective, for those who don't know, it's an organization for consultants, coaches who are focused on helping organizations build healthy companies, healthy organizations, that kind of thing. And so we are committed to growing, to be our best, grow our expertise together to be the best we can be, and also to network together to help each other out. And so that's me. Here's my friend Terry.
I'm Dr. Terry Wager, Generator Consulting, and we work with businesses the same as Doug, and we work with other organizational professionals in order to raise the bar, so to speak, and make sure that we are helping people at the highest level possible. I love the Organizational Health Collective. I think that we're doing some really good work there, helping people to understand what it's all about, and doing our best to connect people that can benefit from our help. So anyway, what are we talking about today, Doug?
Well, today's topic is, I want to build a healthy company, but how do I know if I'm a healthy leader, and do I need to be?
Right.
And so
are we talking about like sick versus healthy, or are we talking what like, we can't have a chest cold? What's going on?
No. Yeah, we're not necessarily talking about the physical health of the organization, or the physical health of the people, I guess, but we're more talking about the emotional, relational health. And how do we connect within teams? How do we connect with others in our organization? How do we motivate? How do we engage? And at what level? And so how do we get our people all together, all on the same page, for each other, working and interacting in healthy relationships?
Gotcha.
Is that a fair description, Terry, or do you want to
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And why is this important to have a healthy organization? I mean, isn't it okay if you're just making money? I mean, we're cruising along, making as much money as we can. Perfect.
Well, I mean, some people want to stop right there, right? But to be honest, if you're in that case, you're probably not making the most money you can make. One, you're not being as productive as you can be. Two, but three, do you have joy, satisfaction, happiness in that? Or are you just a miserable person, the Ebenezer Scrooge of business, making your way along, trying to make more money, and you don't really care about people? And but guess what? If that's you, guess who you're going to lose? Your best people, because they don't want to hang around. They don't want to be around someone who all they care about is how many dimes they can make, and don't really care about them as people. And so your best people are continually going to be going outside of your company to go find work. And you're honestly not going to build your company to be a stronger company.
So what I'm hearing, and I've heard this from businesses that I've talked to too, is I have to work on making my company healthy in order to be productive.
Yep.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think we're pretty productive, and if we're not, I just get rid of those people, and then I bring people in that are going to be more productive.
How's turnover?
What's that?
How's turnover? How's
right. Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people who think, hey, I'm content with where we're at. We're doing well. We're productive. I don't care. And I'm not really worried about people. And hey, you know what? If that's you, then we might not be your flavor. But at the end of the day, I will challenge you that you could be doing better as an organization, better as a company. You could be having more joy and fulfillment in your own life, even in your work. And your team that leads your organization, or your teams at every level, could be operating better. And you could attract the right people to work at your company by being a company that's healthy.
Absolutely.
And so good luck if you're going to just say, hey, I'm going to fire and fire and fire. Eventually, your reputation is going to get out, and people are going to say, I'm not working for you. I'm out of here.
Well, it's a numbers game, right? I totally agree with what you're saying, Doug, and I've had these conversations with people a number of times. And the interesting thing I find is people really move to the smart side of business and they think about, well, it's a system or a process or something I'm doing wrong inside the processes of the business or the policy of what we do here
Yep.
that's going to make it better. And what happens is it makes it more rigid.
Yeah.
And they can even have some kind of decision tree on, well, they didn't show up, they didn't do this, they did do this, they didn't do that. And so therefore we do this. And it becomes almost like a if that, then this kind
Yep.
of world. But that is very robotic and not very relational.
Yep.
And so it's very good if you're creating an automated email sequence or something like that in a business
Right.
so that they get things automatically. But it's not very good if you're dealing with a team.
Yep. No, not at all. And I think leaders for a while had moved toward the idea that treating people as though they're just like every other asset in the company. And that falls apart because they're not. They have emotions. They have, if they're miserable at work, they don't work as well. If they are, if they're at odds with one another, guess what? They're not going to work well with that person. Over time, if they start building up, hey, I like these people and not those people, hey, we get silos in our organization. And guess what doesn't work as well? Our organization. And so
Absolutely.
The idea that we can treat people like widgets is not a good idea. It conceptually, it may look good on a spreadsheet or something, but it doesn't look good in real life.
I'll take that one further with a conversation I was having with another friend of mine. Yes, I have more than one. I have two friends. But he was talking about the idea that everybody's freaked out about AI taking jobs and AI is going to take over and AI is going to do all of this. And I think there's a very big world belief that now that AI is here, it's been here since the 70s, by the way, that it's going to take over and we're going to lose jobs. And what he said was, fantastic. And I think really goes to what we're talking about here is AI isn't going to take jobs. People who don't know how to use it are going to be looked over for promotion or looked over for jobs because being able to use AI is a skill. But if those people who are really skilled at using AI can't have a human conversation with people and can't connect, it doesn't matter how good their skills are with AI, or it doesn't matter how good their skills are without AI. If they can't actually communicate and connect, they're going to have a hard time in a business because business is about relationships.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and who are you selling to, right? You're not selling to AI, you're selling to a human being.
Yeah, AI's never bought anything from me.
No, me neither. So at the end of the day, you still have to be able to relate with human beings. You still have to have those relationship abilities outwardly, but you also are going to need them inwardly because even AI, you're going to have to be able to manage that and have people in the roles of managing that and using it. So like you said, it's a skill, but you also have to keep the people skill there too. And so it's both sides. It's the smart of, can I use AI? But it's also the healthy side of, hey, do I know how to relate to other people? Can I train other people in using this AI? Can I take what the AI gives me and use it and apply it to people? How do I do that?
Absolutely. And so what does it look like when the business is unhealthy? Because we're talking about health. And I think people are like, well, like I said, when I was a kid in the beginning, is like, I don't have a chest cold, so I'm healthy. What does an unhealthy organization look like that we're talking about needs to actually kind of change their focus a little bit?
Yeah, that's good. So I would say some of the key pieces are relationships. One of the foundations within a healthy organization is trust, and being able to have that level of trust, and not just trust as in like, you've done this before, therefore I know you will do it again, but deeper trust that says, you know what, I believe you're out for my welfare. I can be vulnerable with you. I can share when I'm weak and I can't do something, or I'm weak and I need help, or when I fail at something so that I can get help. And I can say, hey, you know what, humbly say, hey, these are my strengths. I think I'd be better used over here. We can ask questions. We can contend with over ideas. We can begin to have that healthier conflict, that good conflict over, hey, you know what, that's a great idea, but if you can't say that's a great idea, but in a meeting, you got a problem. You're not healthy. If your meetings cannot get into good, healthy, hearty discussion, you're not healthy. If you don't have people that can commit to a decision and stick to it and not walk outside the office and go, yeah, this is going to fail, I can't wait to see this. But instead, they're fully committed to making what you've decided happen, you're not healthy. If you have people who are not holding each other accountable, not just the leader going, hey, you know what, you've got to do X, Y, and Z, but they're not holding each other accountable. They don't feel safe to do that, or they don't want to do it, or they won't enter the discomfort of it. Well, then you're not healthy. And if you're don't have an entire group focused on, hey, what are our collective goals? What are we headed toward? What's our collective purpose? What's our collective values? What's our collective mission in this thing? What's our collective strategy of how we go about these things? If you're not focused in those ways together, you're not healthy. It's that bringing together. It's that building a unity of an organization that, guess what? We are together. We're on the same page. We're fighting for each other and for the greater purpose that we're focused on.
One of the things that I think about, there's a couple of things I listen for with people that are stuck in some kind of either mental rigidity or some kind of doubt that things can be any different, which are keys for me that, okay, there's some things we got to work on here. And one is, well, that's just the way it is.
Yep.
And then the other one, and I actually call these the two lies we tell ourselves. And the other one is, it's just the way I am.
Yep.
And if we're saying it's just the way it is, that means that there is no other way to change. And we really don't need to have a discussion any further. And if it's just the way I am, that means it's from the biological standpoint, I've been born into this behavior and I can't change my behavior. And if we got that going on, well, we've got some real rigidity there. And I guarantee if we see it in one person, we're going to see it in everywhere else, because it's infectious. And we can have an infectious culture of growth and development, or we can have an infectious culture of we can't do anything about it. And when we're living in that culture of we can't do anything other than just what we've always done, the way we've always done it, because it's the way I am, we're kind of dead in the water. And that's where we really need to start going, how am I wrong about this?
Yeah, that's good. So what I hear you saying is the idea that change and growth are a baseline, instead of the idea that no one can change, nothing can change, it's just what it is. We just got this, almost fate of this destiny of, oh, this is just what it is. It can't be any different. We can't be any different. We're done.
Yeah. And people really move into, I hate to say it, but a victim stance of, I just can't make a change here. And I've heard it from many people. It's like, you know what? I wish I had the power to bring you into my system because it's broken, but they don't listen to me. Well, not with that attitude, they don't.
No.
Right? It's like, no, you are a cog in the wheel, but if you stop, everything stops. What can you do? Who can you talk to? How can you be the beacon of something needs to be different? And I've honestly worked with people in executive coaching that are on a team that doesn't really work well together. And as they started to grasp some of the concepts that we talk about and some of the things that I teach specifically around personal empowerment and personal responsibility and emotional regulation, and I go, start doing this, and you start to see their whole team change. Because, the reality is our team is a construct of people, but if one changes, everything else has to change too, because change is not a vacuum kind of situation. And so you start to change your own outlook and attitude. You start to bring something different to the team, and the team's going to react differently. Doesn't matter if you're the newest person or the oldest person in the team. Change happens when somebody does something different.
That's great. Well, and I think and help me with this if you see it differently or how you see it. But I think part of the problem we have there is we view things very linearly, especially as Americans, as opposed to realizing things are systemic. And so if it's linear, it means what only the leader can make change, right? But if it's systemic, it means anyone on the team changing has an impact on the entire system and team and the entire
Absolutely.
organization.
Absolutely.
And so,
And I think that I think it happens within all cultures, but it's just we see it differently in different cultures. Sometimes it's maybe everybody's trying too much to do different things, and then it's um,
mhm,
instead of working together for that common thing, and then working together could be, all of
yeah,
a sudden we all need to be locked hands and go together as a unit. And now it's really codependent
mhm,
instead of, no, I do this and you do that and you over here do this. And we're all moving towards a common goal, separate but together. And so there needs
mhm,
to be an understanding. And what creates that understanding is the communication within the group. And it
mhm,
has to be vulnerable communication.
yeah,
And honestly, I unfortunately, we all want everybody else to be more vulnerable first.
yeah, yep, yep,
And as a result, nobody wants to put their hand up and go, I'm all screwed up and I don't get it. Or I don't know what to do. Or I don't know how to move forward. Or I think I broke it. Nobody
mm,
wants to do that. I think you broke it. I was sitting here messing with this thing over here and it went haywire and I think you broke it.
right. Pretty sure it's someone
Somebody
else's
messed
fault.
with
It's
it.
not mine. I know that.
It wasn't me. Um, and it wasn't me. We learned in 2 years old or something like that, and we've taken it on through and mastered. It wasn't me.
Mm, yeah,
And as a result, well, it's just the way I am. It wasn't me.
right. Yep. Yeah. It's happened to me over life, and that's not my fault that it came out this way. That's not my problem.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we have all mastered being able to rationalize, which is not a good thing. We're rational beings, right? It's not a good thing to be rational a lot, because what we're actually doing is we're using our magical mind to make sense of how we can't do stuff,
Hmm.
and we
So flesh that out for me.
disempower
What does that
ourselves.
look like? Yeah. What does that look like for me as an individual if I'm in an organization? What do I do?
Well, a lot of times, I'll tell you the thing that I find the most interesting is when a company is making a policy for everything.
Hmm.
Um, Whenever they have a problem, they make a policy. And I'm not saying the policy is bad. I worked in a prison system for years, and they had a lot of policy and they had a lot of structure. And I love structure because it helps us to see where we're making mistakes and then how can we actually get back into line with the structure to be able
Yep.
to run correctly. But we need enough structure that we can move forward, and then enough freedom to be able to be flexible. And
Hmm.
there's
Yep.
there's inflexibility is a very big sign that there's a lack of health. And you said that
Right.
earlier. And the inflexibility means we're moving into creating policy around everything. We had a call from somebody and it was a complaint. Okay, we need to
Hmm.
make a policy for that type of complaint. No, we don't. We need to talk to them.
Right.
We don't
Right.
need a policy for every call there is. We need to talk to them and find out what's going on. And the policy
Right.
should be communicate. But we
Yep.
want to create a different policy where we don't have to communicate. Or,
Hmm.
automate
Yep.
it. I was actually doing some tax stuff and working through the IRS phone tree, and they've created a policy where uh, you call and you get routed and rerouted and rerouted and rerouted until they hang up on you.
Oh gosh. Wow. That's
It's like,
terrible.
hey, that is a great policy for them. However, I can understand why people get a little upset with them, because that was like several different calls through, you know,
Wow.
hung.
Whoop. I'm losing you there, Terry, on my end, but I don't know if I'm live or you're live here and what's going on. But as Terry's saying, the structure there, unfortunately, what I think, well, I would say what occurs far too often is the idea that structure becomes too central. And so structure becomes the thing rather than what structure is supposed to be, which is the support of the thing. And so just to encourage you, as you think about building structure in your organization, that structure can't be the be all end all. When it becomes the be all end all, then we get what we get, which is we dehumanize the system. And if you're in any sort of customer service role, that's not going to help you. The IRS can probably say, hey, who cares in Terry's story, right? Hey, you don't contact me, I keep your money. But guess what? Any business that is looking to be customer centric cares about having customers and building customers and out there selling. Well, guess what? The more you dehumanize, the less you connect with your customers. And so when structure becomes too central, we become more dehumanized. And the other piece I would say is a helpful piece is the idea that one of the things we see is that when on kind of if you put it together, well, do it this way. If you put it together on a graph and there's a grid, and over on this side of the grid, you've got need for structure, and over on the bottom, you have trust. Okay, so trust is the x-axis, the y-axis is structure, right? And there should be a descending line that comes downward because basically as trust increases, we need less structure and policy. But as trust is low, we need more structure and more policy. And so to be healthier, we really want to build trust, which would mean we need less policy because guess what? We can trust our people to do the right thing. We can know that when they're answering calls, we're going to encourage them to be kindly honest, to dive in, to treat people well, to process how we help you. And so I would just encourage on that as trust increases, yeah, you're back. I was just sharing. Hey, I just told them I'd cut you out altogether and didn't want you here. No, just kidding.
Get out. I thought it was, I said bad things about the government, and so they cut me off.
Yeah, they did. They don't like you anymore. You're banned for life. No, I was just sharing two things of when that structure far too often becomes the thing rather than the thing that supports everything. And it needs to be the support, not the centralized thing. And when it becomes a centralized thing, we become way too rigid, as you were saying. We become dehumanized in so many ways. And if we're reaching out to customers and we want to build relationships, because they may work for the IRS because they don't want to talk to you. They don't care. But if you're running a business, guess what? You got to deal with people. And you want to put your best foot forward with people. And to do that means you've got to be human. And then I was also sharing the piece here, just talking about as a graph, as a chart, if you had policy and structure here and trust here, the more trust grows, the less policy and structure we need, because now we can entrust our people with, hey, guess what? You're going to handle a customer service call just fine. And if not, we're going to process that afterward. We're going to talk, and then we're going to get you better at it. And we're going to be good.
Absolutely.
If we have a problem with a customer, we didn't handle it well, we're going to go back to him and talk to him.
I like that a lot. And one of the other things I think about is anybody that has a policy, anybody that has a procedure or a system, has the system been created with the vision and the values in mind?
Yep.
Because I think a lot of people put reactive policy and reactive systems in reacting to a problem rather than the vision.
Mm-hmm.
And if we'd spend more time focusing on what our vision is and the direction of how we're getting to that vision, and putting in policy, procedure, systems to move us along to that vision, the vision is always going to be somewhere around growth, somewhere around connection, somewhere around service, because that's what vision's all about, how we can actually do something better.
Yeah.
Then if the policy is going in for that, we're going to have very little problem with the policy.
Yep.
But if it's reactive, oh my God, they yelled at me. We got to we have to put psychological safety policy in here because we don't want people yelling at each other. Well, that's reactive.
Right.
And I'm not saying that psychological safety isn't a thing. It is a thing. Is it a good thing? I don't know. Is it a bad thing? I don't know. But I do know that if it's a reactive thing, they're not using it, even though it's maybe a great tool. They're not using it the way it should be designed to use.
Yeah.
And so for me, even the best tools, if I'm using a screwdriver to pound in a nail, it's a great tool that's being used in the wrong way. And I think that's what happens when we're not focusing on vision, we're not focusing on culture, we're not focusing on the values, the behavioral values. I want to get that clear because, hey, I value honesty. Everybody does. But what does it look like?
Mhm.
And how are we describing it so that we know it when we see it, that's the thing that we're doing? And I think that the big piece with the healthy leaders is they lose track of the vision of why they're doing what they're doing. They lose track of the purpose. They lose track of the values, and they start just reacting to the need or perceived need
Yep.
as if it's a need for error. And it's like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do this, we need that. I'm going to die if I don't do this. And it's like, well, now you're not very healthy because you're scrambling.
Yeah. Mhm. You're just reactionary. You're not proactive.
Exactly.
Well said. And that's for us why, our system, the building of policies and all of that, the system part comes in step 4, because we've got to have in place first the connected relationships, the cohesive team. We've got to have in place all of the clarity around what's our core purpose, what's our core values, what's our, what is our mission, and what is our strategic anchors? What do we do? How do we make decisions? We've got to have those things in place before we can then we got to work it all the way through the organization before we can ever come around to how do we systematize for this? And the system is for that. It's not for anything and everything, but it's for that. And I love that. It serves the purpose. It serves the vision. It serves the mission. It serves the values.
Right. And that's one of the things that Christine and I are really doing as we're putting our other business together, is really looking at what is serving the vision of what we're doing.
Mm.
How are we going about hiring? How are we going about training? How are we going about putting the word out? How are we going about accumulating or whatever we're doing, or acquiring the different businesses that we're looking at? And so
Yep.
we're looking at all of that. How are we looking at investors? How are we looking at bringing them on and using their funding? Are they part of what we're doing or not? And we've even had conversations of what is the difference between somebody who is an investor, who is interest only investor, versus an equity investor, and how would we determine that? And really kind of understanding exactly what that entails, and then what they receive as a result of that. And it really comes from, what is our vision?
That's great. I love that. A great way to detail that out, of how does that play out in all parts. So let me shift us, because we've done
I have to download this thing and see what I said so I can do it.
Right? Fairly thorough job of describing why is health important? What does health look like? Those sorts of things. But now I'm a leader, and I'm saying, okay, I want my company to look like that. What are the obstacles in my own life, and that how I get in my own way, and how I might be unhealthy to be able to lead that? What gets in the way of that?
Well, one of the first things I think that gets in the way is we can't see ourselves the way other people see us. And then what a lot of people do is they do these 360 evaluations, and then we receive the feedback on the 360, and then we get hurt because we don't like what they said. So then we just decide not to believe it. That they don't know what they're talking about. They suck. And then we as a CEO leave the company because they all said mean things. But it really, I'm not talking about 360 necessarily, but I'm talking about a real, rigorously honest look at ourselves, and look at, and I can't do it alone, by the way. I cannot do a rigorous inventory of myself by myself, because I've got this thing called an ego, which is right next to me. It's my protector. And one of the main things it's protecting me from is what I fear about me not being good enough. And if there's anybody out there that thinks they don't have that fear, your protector just lied to you, and you do. We all have that fear. Now, how much it gets in the way of our performance is all in how much we can admit that it's there so it doesn't trip us up.
Mhm.
People who are high performing have a relatively good idea of what they don't like about themselves. They have a relatively good way to forgive their failings, and they have a
Mhm.
good ability to really focus on what is working. But they also, and I've seen this from every high performer I've ever interacted with, they're always willing to look for more. They're always
Mm.
looking to see or have you tell them what they're missing. Because high performers
Mm.
realize they have what I'm talking about as blind spots.
Yeah.
And they always know that if they're at
Mm.
this level, I could be at this level. If they're at this level, they know they could be at this level. And whether the level is like this big difference or that big a difference, they know that they can do more.
Mm.
And they're
Yeah.
open to hearing what they're not doing well enough to make a change and to perform better.
Mm. That's good.
So it's self-awareness. It's
Yeah.
and it's not self-awareness. It's the willingness to grow in self-awareness. I think that's the key. Is it's the willingness to grow in self-awareness that is the key to being able to become more healthy.
Mm. That's good. So if I'm a leader in my organization, my people haven't necessarily seen me that way. I'm going to venture the guess that says they're probably not the people that have the trust level with me to actually tell me the truth.
Well,
So I
yeah.
probably need those people you're telling me to get around me, to be people that I can establish that vulnerability-based trust with initially, that they can tell me the truth and I can hear the truth and I can begin to change. And then I can start building that trust level with the people around me.
Yeah,
Is
and
that?
I mean, I think for anybody, an executive coach, and this is probably a shameless plug, but an executive coach is something that is really, really valuable for this, because if you can't allow yourself to be the mistake maker or to put your hand up saying I don't know or I'm not sure or just be vulnerable, if you can't do that, if you need to go off campus of
Right.
your job to talk about what's not working with somebody in private so that you can go and then talk about it and have a game plan of how to not address it, but then address it, not address your stuff, but address the problem, then that's a problem.
Yep. Very
If
much
that
so.
made any sense. I think it did.
Totally. Totally.
Um,
It makes sense to me at least. I don't know, but I see
and
things
and
similar.
and it really speaks to humility. Is like if I can't put my hand up and say, you know what, I'm just another dumb human that makes mistakes and doesn't see the whole picture, and I say stupid things sometimes, and I do stupid things sometimes, and sometimes it comes from ignorance, and sometimes it comes from the trying to be funny and I'm not. Sometimes it comes from, well, maybe I am. I don't know. Probably not. But it's a good bet that I'm not, but I entertain myself a lot. But if it comes from the idea that I just don't know how to say what I'm saying
Mm.
or formulate the idea, I got to be able to put it out there and go, okay, I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I think that there's a problem and I want to dig.
Mm. Yep.
And I think that I've
Yeah.
had some of the best conversations with leaders and, in fact, followers and employees. They're like, something's not working. I don't know what it is.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about what's not working, or talk about what your frustration is around it not working, or talk about, let's just get it out all on the table and then see where things land. And maybe we can make sense of it. But the problem
Mm.
that I think too many people have, and this is across the board in unhealthy organizations, as well as some healthy but not really high performing, is they want to figure it out before they can perform. So
Mm.
they want
Yep.
to figure out the whole answer before they put it out there. And I know
Yep.
for me, I was like that when I was a kid. Is like my dad was super good at woodworking and super good at projects and all of that stuff. And I thought I had to actually have it perfect before I presented it. So I never
Mm.
let anybody see my
Yeah.
process in the beginning. And then he'd be like, I don't know how you got to where you're at, but that thing is terrible. And I'd be like, well, so's yours.
Yep.
Right. And it's like, I tried to hide my work. We got to stop trying to hide our work and start trying to put it all out there and go, okay, what can we do better?
Yep. That's good. That's good. And in so many ways, that's the impetus behind things like Agile and other things like that. Is like, we want to make corrections in the process, not at the end. Right. And so how do we do that as people? We've got to be that same way. We've got to be vulnerable about our process so that people can help us with the processing.
Right.
And so we don't get to an end and then all of a sudden they're like, well, the end sucks, but I don't know how you got here.
Right.
And so
Well,
we need
and
to
I'll
open
say
up the
something
process
about
to feedback.
Agile and Six Sigma and all of these different things is they're very, very good ideas. And in fact, like most people know, I'm a psychologist, and I have been taught a lot of different theoretical orientations. I mean, too many probably, and a bunch of different processes and a bunch of different. This is the way it has to be kind of ideas. And what happens is we get so locked in and so in love with our process or our system that we don't realize we've created a blind spot with it.
Yeah.
And one of the
Yep.
things I love to challenge people when they have their systems that are working really well is, okay, how is it not working well? Answer that. Really dive in on your system that you're so excited about and go, how is it broken? And I couldn't see it because I like my system.
Yep. Yep. That's good. I like that. And so in so many ways, that's again where the why got lost of why we did the system.
Absolutely. Well, why do you use
the thing?
Because I heard it was really good and another company used it, so we started using it. Does it go along with your vision? No. Oh.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Oh. Whoa. Or the Agile. We're using Agile. What for? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard it really worked well. For what? IT. Well, we're not an IT company.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. Whoops.
I don't know enough about each one of these to go, this is exactly what you use it for, how. But the bigger question for me is, okay, you have a system. How is it working well for you, and how is it getting in the way?
Yep. Yeah.
And when we can really look at that and explore it, and this is the thing that I really like to do, is from a place of humility and a place of, I don't know all the answers, and I'm not coming in telling you that I have the answer to fix your organization. I have some questions that I want to ask, and when we get the answers to them, you probably will be running a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so
go ahead.
What I hear you describing is, for the leader, there's got to be a growth in humility, teachability, a mentality that says, I need to grow and change, from I need to be perfect all out front. I want everyone to look and see this kind of mask that I wear rather than see the true reality that goes on underneath it. Instead, we've got to be able to pull the mask off and go, hey, here's me, help me. And very often that is not, if you're not at a healthy place, getting healthy might take an executive coach would be a helpful place. Getting some mentors of other leaders who are in similar positions, who you see are healthy and who you see operate in better ways, and getting those connections. I would also say people like your spouse, your family, the people closest into you could give you really good feedback, as long as they feel you trust them and you're open to change. Because if you're not, they're not going to tell you anything. But to the degree that you're open to change, they're going to be a great source of feedback. They're going to say, hey, when you enter a room, this is the impact you have. Everyone shuts up because you take the stage. Or when we speak to you, we do so and we hold back stuff because your natural response is to react rather than to process and listen.
Right. And the fact of the matter is, you reminded me, I was going to bring this up, but when you enter a room, everybody's behavior changes. Isn't necessarily a bad thing, and it might not be that their behavior changes in a bad way. And I'm saying that because I have a colleague that I work with. I've been coaching his team for a little while now, And one of the things that I told him just the other day is you can't be in the interview when they interview this guy, because there's something about you specifically that everybody seems to rise. Everybody seems to get much more at peace. They seem to get more jovial. They seem to get more like you just by being around you. And this guy's name is Kevin. And they just tend to start being like you. And you're so amiable and fun and exciting to be around. And people just gravitate towards you. But the problem is they aren't like that when you're not there. And you just have to be in the room and they start kind of acting that way. And so what we want to see is how these people are without you there. And so this interview that you're going to have with this next person, I think they should have the interview without you there. And then see what they think without you there. And is these traits that you're excited about he has more of a situation with them? It's funny, they're calling right now. A situation that is because they see this guy that way, or because this guy started acting in concert with how you behave. And when we can really tease that apart, we go, oh, okay, this was an artifact, or no, this is the real deal with this guy.
Right. Well, and so that's a helpful piece where it's like, as a leader, growing to understand how I impact a room, I impact individuals is vital, because it helps me make those strategic decisions that, guess what, I may not be the best person to be in that interview right now. Or if I am in an interview, I need to make sure there's other interviews without me there so that we can make comparisons and we can talk about, hey, what do you see? What do I see? And I can get that sort of feedback that I would be blind to, because once I'm in the room, it changes everything. And that's true for any leader. When you're in a room, it changes everything. And if you don't know that, then you're not very self-aware, because leaders enter a room and it changes the dynamic of a room. Leaders, when you speak, when you share your opinion, it changes the dynamic of everyone else's opinions. When you are vulnerable, it also changes the dynamic of everyone else's opinions. If you're vulnerable first, people will be vulnerable. If you're not, they won't. If you share your opinion at the front end, they're never going to share theirs. They're going to agree with yours. So you got to hold back and let other people get into things before you actually dive in with your own thoughts and opinion. And so knowing how you impact things is vital. And then knowing how other things impact you, starting to figure out what are the things that tick me off in an instant. And then diving below that and figuring out, okay, well, what's there? Why is that? Why, when so-and-so comes in the room and gives me this news, I'm pissed. And it wasn't that bad of news, but I went through the roof. Or why, when someone came in, am I just depressed? Like, oh, well, we're done. We're screwed. It's over. Why? Why does it hit me that way? What's impacting me, and what's below that is a part of that leader self-awareness growing toward health.
Right.
And then on a step out from there, I would say even the cultural influences, right? Because if I grew up in America, I grew up in a very individualistic view of life. And so everything's about me. And so the question always comes back to and sees, and I'm always in the picture. If I grew up in Japan, I grew up in this communal sense, and how am I affecting the community is first and foremost in my eyes. And yet, as you talked about earlier, we can be codependent, we can be totally independent, or we can be interdependent, which is that middle place. And so if I come from the Japanese community, I got to realize, guess what? I can't worry about everyone else is going to be upset. I'm going to upset the community by saying the important truth. But if I come from the individualistic society, I also have to understand that, guess what? I can't make it just how I view it must be right. I actually have to understand. I need to understand from the community, how does this impact you? What is this? What happens? And instead of like, oh, this is what it looks like to me, so that must be truth. And so both, you have to understand, how did my culture impact me and bring me along, so that now I know when I'm entering a room, I enter with these biases.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important to, and it's funny you say bias, because there's hundreds of biases out there. A book I read talks about 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-sabotage, whatever. But it's funny because our biases are all based on our fears. A lot of them are unconscious. Our emotions are triggered, And then we go, well, that must mean this, or that must mean that, or that must mean. And what we tend to do when we're living in one of those biases is we don't go, maybe I'm wrong. I need to go check. And so we lack curiosity. And as a result, we just assume we're right about what we thought. And this is going on a daily basis about everything. And I mean, if you're not sure if I'm right about this, just think about the last time you were watching a TV show, whether you got it right or wrong. You go, I think he did it. Well, the show sets it up so we guess, and then the show sets it up so we could be wrong. But we all tend to try to guess the answer.
Yeah.
And we got set up with this when we were kids. Is like, okay, you get rewarded if you got the answer. 2 + 2? Raise your hand if you know the answer. Oh, okay, I know the answer. We get taught to know the answer.
Yep.
And so rather than saying, okay, we want, and this might be good for schools if they decided we're going to change it all and say, okay, we want everybody to celebrate everybody who doesn't know the answer and learns how to ask more questions. And the last thing anybody wants is questions. So we're not going to do that in school. Don't ask me where leopards get their spots. I don't want to know. I don't want to have to answer that because I don't want to say I don't know. And so we get trapped in this idea that we have to have the answers and we don't want to be questioned. And we don't want to be in that turmoil of not sure. Now we look stupid. And so let's create a policy. Let's create a rigid structure. Let's make sure that no matter what happens, I can live a full day without having to fear.
Yeah.
And as a result, we create this automaton process where we just bounce from one thing to another, totally in fear of being afraid of something soon, but pretending that we solved it.
Right.
And that sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think of your growing up in school thing is, I don't want to raise my hand, answer the question, and look like an idiot. But that's the assumption, is I look like an idiot if I'm wrong. Instead of the assumption being, guess what? I got to get things wrong to figure it out and get the right answer. Yeah. And so let's just throw out ideas and come to a conclusion and work toward the answer. We don't do that process, right? We instead just start asking someone who's got the answer. Instead of, as a group, how do we process to an answer? And that's not normal in our society. That's not normal in the way we've grown and we think. And yet that's what we need in the business world, is that we work together toward the answer rather than you show up and you've got the right answer. And so, so how many meetings people sit there silently because they don't have the perfect right answer yet? And yet, how are we ever going to get the best answer if we don't have the discussion and process it together and work toward the answer?
Right. And that's one of the reasons that in those meetings, my first statement here is, okay, we're all in this room and nobody leaves the room until everybody has spoken on it. Silence means disagreement, and we got to walk out with agreement next steps.
Yep.
Silence means disagreement. So let's get started.
I love it. Yep. Yep. So just maybe coming around and summing up a little bit. I mean, there's so much we could go on and on talking about how would a leader dive deeper into growing in their health. And that's a place you got to start going into coaching. And we could go on and on about what does it look like health-wise and what are the influences and impacts on us. But how would you sum up, hey, these are, if I'm a leader, I'm looking to grow in my own health to be able to lead others. It seems like our starting place is one, self-awareness, right? You've got to grow in that. You got to take some time. You got to take time, I would say, and make time for this, because there's too many people who are, oh, I'm too busy, I can't do that. Well, guess what? If it's vitally important to you and your company or you and your organization, you've got to make time. And then two, that time of self-reflection, but also, as you said, I heard the time of, hey, it's probably a good idea to get a coach, someone who can see differently than you see and walk that with you. We said things like a mentor, other mentors and peers and family members, spouses, others around you close enough that they can actually tell you the truth and see you well enough to tell you that truth. What else? What other steps are we taking in our growth to be a healthy leader before we can lead that organization to be healthy?
I really think for me, the first step is to go, okay, it goes back to what you just said. You got to look at you and go, okay, if everything was perfect, is this the way it would be running?
Right.
And if not, okay, make a list of the things that aren't working the way you want them to, and then go, okay, how many times have I gone to system, process, or people to hire the right people or system or process to make this work better, and it's actually made it the way I want it to be. We have one group that we've been working with. We worked with a lot last year, and they actually implemented. They actually created a software and implemented it to help them understand their cost in what they're doing, and it was very, very helpful. But she said the great thing is about that is it makes it us spend less time in putting projects together, but it still doesn't solve the fact that people don't talk to each other the way they need to. And so we need a lot of work around that still. And so it's like we spend a lot of time on the smart side of business, product development or offer development, or making sure that the systems are working, or making sure that we got a new system to talk to each other and still avoid the topics that we want to talk about on this new communication platform.
Yep.
What is it that's missing that you haven't done? And if you don't have any answers for it, then you need to talk to somebody like us, and we can actually help you kind of identify that. But most likely, are your meetings good? Do you like them?
Yep.
Do you like the people you work with and want to see them? Do you get the dreaded Sunday evening, or worse, even Monday morning? Oh God, dreading getting to the office. If those things are going on, then you got some opportunities to create more health in your office, because those things should be exciting and fun, and I get to go see the other people in my life, and it's not a burden to go away from my life to do this stuff. And then I don't have to bring that burden back home. And some people are friggin' like, it's a burden at home, and then I get to go to work, and then, well, now you got the opposite problem.
Right.
Because you put all of your stuff in work, but you're not actually communicating at home.
Yep.
And for me, the work-life balance isn't about time. It's about emotional state. Being able to regulate my emotional state no matter where I am. And if that's a problem, well, you got to start talking to somebody like us. I mean, you can go see a therapist, but I don't know if they're going to do what you need to have done. It's really moving into working around the idea of clarity. Is the vision for my life, whether it's business or relationships, is the clarity for my life there for me and communicated to anybody else? And if it's not, then you need to start looking at that.
Yeah, that's good. Well said. I love it. Thank you for pulling that together. Now, two underlying things I just want to encourage you as leaders watching this, that one, it takes courage to step into this, because guess what? It's risky. You're stepping into a place of vulnerability, and so it requires courage and strength to do that. On the other side, it takes humility. It takes a willingness to say, I'm not the be all end all. I don't have everything I need. I actually need to grow. I actually have spaces of weakness and strength. I have potential that I don't meet because I've got to work on things. And you need to have that humility and that courage side by side to be able to make this journey. And so that's just the encouragement. Is first, it might take a step of courage to just say, I'm not sure I want to hear about what people say about me and what people think of me, but guess what? I think I need to hear what people have to say about me. And I'm going to take that step of courage, even though it's a scary world. It's a risk.
Absolutely.
Take the risk. It is so worth it, because when you get to the other side, when you get to that place where you're working with people who you trust enough to share the truth with you, and they trust you enough to share the truth with them, you're going to be at a place that is so much more happy, so much more joyful, so much more where you're growing and you're going, wow, this is awesome. I'm changing, I'm growing, I'm doing things I never did before. This is amazing. And so it is worth it. If you have never gone there, have the courage, take the step, go for it. And we're here to help. And so thanks for listening to us today. We'll have more in future times about this kind of thing. And if you want to reach out to us, we'll have our information in just a second. But we're thrilled that you joined us today. And we look forward to seeing you next week. So join us again next week. I'm Doug, it's Terry, and we will see you.